Hey everyone, it's Jennifer Zoeller, the 262 Market Report. Today we're going to be talking about sellers, solutions for sellers, how the interest rates affecting sellers, of course, all in the Milwaukee metro area. And today we have John Warren with A Plus Mortgage. A little bit about John. I got to read into it. It's so interesting. Okay, so he's been in the mortgage industry 3 years, but he has a long history of flipping and managing property. So he's really been in the real estate market much longer than 3 years. Before that, he used to professionally buy and trade gold and silver. I think, did you start that when you were like out of high school or something?
15.
15. And then before that, he was scamming his friends. Actually, he's been an entrepreneur since he's been very young, and he was selling his friends candy. They could be on credit. You want to explain yourself?
Sure. My sister worked for a large corporation that did lots of events, and there would be lots of new packages of candy. So she gave them all to me, and back in 1996, people would bring a quarter for to get their carton of milk, and I would sell ring pops and other candy, and I even had like little tabs for people that wanted to buy two when they only could buy one. Um,
So you had a soft heart, except for when the tab got too high. Then you'd lose a friend.
Well, they would avoid me because the debt got expensive.
The candy man, we'll call him. All right. I know. So, John, let's talk about the market. What's going on in the Milwaukee market? What are you seeing this week?
Sure, for this week, the market has definitely shifted to a degree where we're not seeing as many buyers, but we're also not seeing as many sellers. So that kind of balances out, and it's still leaving the market in a very competitive state. Out of my last 3 or 4 offers, many of them have foregone certain contingencies, whether it's home inspection, appraisal, or even financing. And we're still seeing pretty high competition for markets where the property is in nice condition, it's priced appropriately. We're typically seeing 10 to 15% over asking still. So it's still competitive. It's not the 30 offers that we saw last year, but it might be 4 or 5, and they might be very competitive still.
That's kind of what Michelle and I are seeing too. Like, we're seeing that if a home is in good condition, that you got to have your sellers prepared or your buyers prepared to go in with their strong offer and be willing to go over, be willing to give up some concessions as far as inspection or appraisal. But then that homes that aren't in perfect condition, we're seeing some wiggle room. Are you guys seeing that with your offers too?
Absolutely. If we see homes that have been on the markets a couple of weeks, normally that's an indication that maybe it was mispriced. Maybe there's just better homes in that area at that time, but we are seeing still houses that are selling without contingencies in those cases. You have a little bit more wiggle room for those homes should you find a home that you like that has been on the market a few weeks.
I think like, I feel like HGTV has really affected first time buyers that a lot of times they want to go in and have that like glossy brand new house. And I think like it's kind of training my first time buyers that this is where not only you're going to get your in a home, you're not going to have to go offer, but you're going to get more equity by doing the improvements yourself. But I think it's kind of tricky to get buyers sometimes right now to not want the beautiful home.
It's true,
Yeah.
but it's well worth the effort. Even my first starter home in 2012, we did tons of the improvements. Material costs were a little cheaper then, but income was a little cheaper too. So
Right.
either way, whether you buy a house to improve it and you can get a discount and buy on your terms, either way, that's beneficial for you.
Absolutely. And what about rates this week? Where are we at? Where are we going?
Yeah, rates have been creeping up this past week. We have been getting some news about just inflation numbers not doing what the Federal Reserve is looking for. So we're seeing slightly higher figures for that. It's spooking the market a little bit. A couple weeks ago, interest rates were right around 6%. As of today, they're about 7% is what you can expect on a 30-year fixed mortgage. Um, it's kind of been a roller coaster with rates where we've seen them go up and down. So I wouldn't let 7% necessarily scare you because in 2 weeks from now, we could be back at 6 with how volatile the market has been.
Do you find like 7% is a rate that kind of does scare buyers a little bit? Like for some reason, I kind of feel some of my buyers like they hear seven, like, oh, we're going to wait a little bit. I don't know. Do you see that or not?
Absolutely. So, historically speaking, it's easy to say rates have always been between 5 and 7. I think the scare factor is in 2022 January, we were looking at a 3% interest rate, and we've never accelerated this quickly in interest rates, but that's because we're not being protected by the Federal Reserve anymore by them artificially suppressing rates like they have from 2008 to 2001. And so 2022 is the first time we've experienced a free market in rates since before the last housing crisis. So I do believe that we'll be staying in this 5 to 7% range. Historically, it makes sense, but also from a fundamental of how money is created and how banks generate money, I think we're here to stay in that 5 to 7% range. But the shock is real because it happened so
Yeah.
fast.
So first of all, get comfortable. We're here to
Yes.
stay for a little while. But I think you're right, that's the acceleration because like buyers know not that long ago I was at 3. And it's not like you went, it crept up over 3 years and they're at 7. 7 would feel different than knowing a year and a half ago I could have got 3.
And
Uh,
I think the other aspect to consider is the affordability, right, of having a 7% rate. Now that monthly payment is higher, so what you may have been able to buy a year ago is not the same as what you can do at a 7% rate.
Right, right. And so let's dive in. So today we want to talk a little bit about from a seller's perspective, sellers who are going to buy again and the things that they think about, solutions. So my first question for you is, how have higher rates impacted sellers?
Yeah, higher rates, you believe it or not, even though we've had this massive surge in rate, right? We went from 3 all the way to 7 in 1 year. We are still seeing increase in home sale prices. I think we saw last month an 8% increase in price.
Yeah,
So even though rates have gone up and maybe there is not as many buyers out there, the demand for housing is real. It hasn't diminished. There may be some more people on the sidelines, but every day people still have to move for job changes, for changes in their family situation. They have twins, let's say, right? And you have a two-bedroom house. You might have to move into a slightly bigger home. There's lots of reasons why people are still moving. The demand for housing is still very real, and it's not anticipated to go anywhere because we've had a housing shortage for some time.
yeah.
Even the last few years, it's just there has not been enough homes for the level of buyers.
I think to like that's it is local to Milwaukee. Sometimes in different places in the country, you'll hear like home prices are dropping, but that is not our case here, and that's why it's really important that you're educated about your local market. Um, and I think you're right. The demand here is still so out of whack. I feel like home prices will likely stay stable for a while. Do you think? Or
I think that over time, as the interest rates settle in and people get more comfortable, sellers may be more willing to proceed and move and do those upgrades and make some changes, which should free up some inventory. But I think that we're still going to see this struggle for the foreseeable future.
yeah. Okay, so how are the higher rates helping sellers to upgrade?
Yeah,
So there's
so
a positive side,
there
right?
is a positive with the higher rates. The super high demand that we're seeing here in Milwaukee is like that 200 to like 450, maybe $500,000 range. So what does that mean for you as a seller? Let's say that you bought 3 years ago, right? And you bought a $250,000 home. There's a good chance that that home has increased in value 50, maybe
Yeah,
$75,000. So that equity you can shift and apply it to your new home, which will reduce your mortgage, right? Because you're doing a much larger down payment the second time. Maybe you bought that house at 3% down. Now you have enough down payment to, let's say, do 20% down on a four or five or $600,000 home. So what we are seeing is for the higher price points, because affordability is impacted by these higher interest rates, there is less of a demand for these six, seven, $800,000 homes. So those looking to upgrade have that option to not only upgrade but maybe control some of the terms within their transaction. Now that's not always the case because there is certain pockets of Milwaukee like Whitefish Bay and others that are the demand is so high and it's mainly a cash buyer in those areas where that it does not apply to those areas. But for like let's say a New Berlin area or Greenfield or Greendale, Pockets in Milwaukee and Waukesha, this very much so applies.
And so if we talk like in terms of like if these are two people, let's say we had a couple and they each qualified for 250 2 years ago, and one bought and one did not. They kept renting. So the person who bought for 250 and they put 3% down, but now their home might be worth like 350, 325. So they've got that 75,000 that they can go to make their next down payment. So they're now move themselves just by owning that home up into this higher home, right? Bigger home. But then the person who never bought it at the 250, they're still going to go into the lower home, right? The lower priced home. And so that's where you're kind of lucky because the same group of people, if you purchase and you have that equity, you can move up the next step. Am I understanding that and explaining
A-
it?
Absolutely. And you cannot time the market. Like we all want to, it's always on our mind, right? But the cost of not purchasing always is going to be consequential for you in the grand scheme of things because rates, although they're a little high now, there is the potential to possibly refi in coming years. It's not a guarantee. We don't know the market. We definitely don't advertise it like it's going down to four
Yeah.
tomorrow. But if you buy today, with certainty, you can assume that your property is going to appreciate 4% a year. That's been the historical trend for decades, and the appreciation trumps the additional monthly payments you do. So long term, even if you bought that 250 house, let's say it's 7% now instead of 4, the amount that that property will appreciate will 8x what you're going to have in that increased monthly payment over time.
That it's such a good point because I have a few buyers even now. They're like, we're gonna wait, like wait for what the price to go down. Prices are not likely going down. Are you gonna wait for the rate to go down? Again, you're losing out on the money that you're still gonna be paying in rent. Like that rent money that you're waiting for is the money that could have gone into your house. And if you think about, like, say you end up renting for like 6 months to a year, that's maybe like $20,000. Like that would be, that's a significant amount if it was in your home.
100%.
Okay, so sellers can upgrade. Another question I have some people ask me they're getting a divorce, they have a great rate. Do what happens? What do you see happening with that situation?
Yeah, sure. So if a divorce can go many ways, right? Let's go best case scenario that we're really amicable. Everybody's getting along. It's a mutual departure, and they're willing to help each other
Like
work through the
airlines, we
process,
have
right?
mutual departures.
Like, um, there's a lot of things we can do. One, before you file a divorce, it's very beneficial to talk to your loan officer because that's the time you have the most flexibility to either structure the other spouse to buy a home and the other spouse to keep the current home. Once we file with the courts, we need that signed marital agreement and the court order, which generally takes 6+ months in the state of Wisconsin. I think we have
Yeah,
a 6 month
we do.
mandatory
Mhm.
waiting period. So it's so important to start that process and have your loan officer and attorney be on the forefront of that conversation because that is how you are going to be able to keep one spouse, let's say, maybe in that lower rate of 3%, and also give the other spouse an opportunity to buy a home of their own. There is some consequences if one spouse keeps that home. I mean, you do have to qualify with two homes in order to buy your next home if you're the other spouse. But there's many situations that we have been able to make that work, get both people in a home, and it makes it that much easier for the attorney to then help you navigate your marital agreement and all the assets because now both people have a home, there's less pressure, it's better for children when they're involved. So
So
there's
people are happier, easier to be peaceful going forward. So on that first home, are both parties still on that home?
both people will still be on that loan. Once you have a signed marital agreement and the court order, then that home can be omitted if you're doing a conventional loan.
Nice. So that's really great advice too, which I really never thought of. Get your lender involved before it gets, and there's plenty of time. I feel like the divorce process really gets drawn out. Like you talk to your agent or your lawyer, and you don't hear from them for a couple months. Well, while you're doing that, talk to your mortgage guy because then you can get it really will add for a lot more peace and not leave you high and dry when you get to the end. Like, oh wait, we wanted to do something with the house. Um, and so let's say is there a way that one person can come off and keep the rate? So two people are divorced. they don't want to both be on there, but it's a great rate. So this person staying in the house wants to keep the rate. Is that possible?
It is possible. We need certain types of loan products to make that though. So if you bought with an FHA mortgage or a VA mortgage, both of those are assumable mortgages. So if you reach out to your mortgage servicer, whoever it is, Wells Fargo, Chase, you can reach out to them and ask them how you begin that process, and they'll give you those instructions for how you could handle that and have one spouse fully assume the mortgage.
Okay. Um, so those were all best case solutions. Everything's peaceful. We were joking before, if things aren't peaceful, then you might be in the position kind of like where I am. You're not buying a house right away. But then I think it's still really important to have a relationship with a lender. So if home ownership is what you want, you can be working toward that in the quickest possible way.
Absolutely. I mean, whenever we have major life changes, whether it's jobs, whether it's divorce, and a home is in the cards, it is always in your best interest to talk to your loan officer because they can best help you structure your future for success. And a lot of times, the biggest problem we have is when people come to us, they already made certain assumptions and took certain actions that prohibit them from being able to lend where we might have been able to work and correct that and decrease their timeline for their next purchase. So instead of having to wait 2 years, maybe we can structure in a way where they can do it in their first 6 months. So whether you're ready to buy or not, but you know it's on the horizon, you can absolutely talk to your loan officer. They can walk you through the process and how to structure it, even without directly applying with them in the beginning. So huge to develop that strategy, have that team, and you can reach out to your agent and they can always give you a preferred contact if you don't know a loan officer to reach out to.
It gives me two thoughts. One, I think like sometimes in those situations, people feel uncomfortable and they don't want to talk to anybody else outside their circle. But know that like your lenders are like your ally, right? Like you're not judging any situation. You've seen it all, you heard it all. Um, you have privacy with them, but you got to don't have that fear of like, oh, I don't want to tell anybody. It's embarrassing. Like that is not the case. And they're like trusted professionals. And the other thing it made me think of it is like, I think in divorce or in anything like real estate is you have to look at as a financial asset, not just as your home but a financial asset, and it's important that you have professionals that are helping you with that financial asset, professional agent, professional lender, because you might have money invested in something else, but your home is also an investment, and to look for the professionals.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so what is your question for sellers who are thinking about getting ready but they're kind of fearful right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of flexibility in what current sellers have, right? One of the things going for anyone selling in this market is they do have a lot of equity in their house. And for the most part, they're in control of the transaction. They have the house, you have the cookie everybody wants, right?
From the Candyman.
From the candy man. And so, with that being said, this market allows you as a seller to maybe sell your house and you get an offer without that home inspection. In other markets, maybe that home inspection you would have been asked to do $5,000 or $10,000 of repairs. It's a real value you're getting that isn't necessarily translated to dollars and cents in the contract, but it very well could be real value in your pocket along with the appraisal gaps. What are you seeing with your appraisals, right? Are you writing an appraisal gap in a lot of your offers?
We're starting to on those homes that are in that like sweet spot of like the 3 to 5, pretty house that's all slick.
Yeah, so that what does that mean for you? What an appraisal gap means is if the offer to purchase says, "Hey, we're buying this house for 350," and the appraiser from the lender says, "Hey, we think this property's worth 335," but they wrote a $20,000 appraisal gap, it means you as a seller, you're still getting paid 350. In other market conditions, you might have to make a concession in order to keep that buyer or have to put it back on the market in you never know what you're going to get in that scenario. So, as a seller right now, you have the cookie, you have the power, which means not only can you choose to sell, but you have this equity that grew that allows you to have more flexibility for your next purchase because you can do more down, you can have a lower loan, you can go and buy your house first and then sell your house after the fact. And working with the right lender might allow you that option to not have a home sale contingency.
Right.
There's a lot of options out there for sellers that didn't exist a few years ago, because of that equity that you have in your home.
Like what is the percentage? I read that the percentage of people have of equity is like it's at an all-time high almost, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if we just look at the market conditions the last few years, I think on average people saw over a 30% increase over the last 3 years, maybe higher.
Nice. That gets back to
Huge.
that those two couples of 250 buyers. All right, well, thank you, John. I think that's been really helpful. Now we have a few, get to know John fun questions. Best kept secret in Milwaukee, John.
Yeah, best kept secret. So I live in a box. I do not get out a lot. I got married at 21. I had kids very young. So when we have the
So yeah,
luxury,
no secrets.
when we have the luxury of going out, one of the very cool experiences you can have in Milwaukee is a restaurant called the Safe House. They have a little password to get in, and it's a secret for those who haven't been there. If you don't know the password, you have to do a little dance or do something silly. You're on video. Everybody in the restaurant can see it, and it's just a good time. It's a good experience, and very enjoyable.
Do you want to show us a dance you had to do to get it?
No, no, definitely not.
Kept secret. Okay. Lake country or lakefront?
Lakefront.
Lakefront. You enjoy like Milwaukee's lakefront?
I like lakefront. Yep.
Yeah. What do you do? Like, what are your favorite things to do then?
Well, because we don't get out that much, but when we do, we like to eat at steakhouses, and there's just a certain atmosphere of the downtown environment, and it's always fun. You have the Milwaukee River where you can boat down.
Yeah.
It's pretty to see the bridge. You get to see the waves crashing. It's almost like being on the ocean.
Yeah.
So you literally can't see anything but water, right? So you wouldn't know if I dropped you off, blindfolded you, and said, "Look at this body of water." You would not know it was an ocean.
No, I know.
Outside of smell.
Yeah. I've had put like pictures on social like down at the lake and they're like, what ocean is that? And that makes you realize like how blessed we are to have Lake Michigan. Okay, Bucks or Brewers?
Bucks all day long.
Why is that?
Basketball is just more exciting for me to watch. So.
Okay. How many cities have you lived in Wisconsin?
One. Born and raised
No.
Greendale, 3 generations.
There's no secret.
So my grandpa was one of the pioneers of Greendale. So Greendale was like one of 3 cities that the Roosevelts made after World War II. And so he was the first police officer. My dad was born and raised there. I'm born and raised, and now our 3 children are being born and raised there.
This is like amazement on my face. Wow.
So we have a lot of history. We've all been to the same schools. They haven't changed since then. So a lot of family history.
Is the cities all by the alphabet, or is that
Yeah, so all the streets are.
What letter do you live on?
I live in the F section. I was born in the E section.
Moving up.
And my dad was born in the A section.
Oh, look at you. Your kids are going to be in like the P or something. Okay, best concert at Summerfest.
I have not been to Summerfest in 15 years.
Wait, hold up. I wrote this list before I knew he didn't do anything. No.
Yeah, right? So I couldn't even tell you who my favorite concert would be.
Well, mine is longer than 15. Mine is like, oh my gosh, 30 years almost.
You haven't been to Summerfest in 15
I've been there, but the best one was Tom Petty.
Okay.
There was a Tom Petty concert there that was insane.
But it is a great environment down there. I mean, I never went. When we went to Summerfest when I was a teenager, it was mainly just to be part of it, watch all the live music. It's quite the experience here in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
It draws a lot of traffic.
Talking about like teenagers at Summerfest, when I had kids and I had my own teenagers, it was like the bane of every mother's existence, like Summerfest.
Oh, for sure. Do they allow teenagers anymore? I don't even know.
Of course.
I don't know.
Yeah. And so like when the last day of Summerfest, all the moms would be like, yes, I made it through. All right, John. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time with us today. We'll have you back soon, hopefully. And thanks for your input. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
How long is it?